Here at Blue Collar Bobbers, we love Honda Rebels and we make kits for them, but the only thing we've never really cared for the bikes are the foot pegs. Gosh, the foot pegs are just so far back, it kind of puts your knees up into your armpits. So what we did is we came up with these forward controls for the Rebels, and they're really cool. And I just wanted to show you briefly what they are. This the black plate here, what it does is it takes the foot peg here from this position right here and moves it up 5 inches to here. And then also we move the foot pedal or the brake pedal up 5 inches also. So this is this brake side, and I'm going to show you the other side. Okay, this is the shifter side of the bike. And you'll notice that we have the same similar black plate here, and then we've included an extended shift rod right here, and that allows you to move the shifter forward as well. The first thing we're going to do is remove the left side, the shifter side foot peg. Now to do that, why don't you go ahead and get a can of WD-40 and give this a shot of WD right here. Either that or some penetrating oil or just oil. That way it'll come off easier and be easier to work with. So go ahead and remove this screw. And then that'll allow this shifting linkage just to slide off the bike just like that. Go ahead and put that screw back in this little linkage here. That way you won't lose that. And then go ahead and remove these two screws. And then we can slide the foot peg and the linkage out of the bike just like that. Next we'll do the brake side, the right side of the bike. Just remove these two screws and we'll take this foot peg off. Okay, we go ahead and pop this little cap off right here. This just pops out. And then go ahead and spray some WD-40 in there. And then go ahead and take this bolt out. And then we'll show you how to get the brake rod off. Okay, go ahead and insert a screwdriver into that slot right there. And you can push that brake forward like that. So go ahead and push that forward like that. And then we'll pry this off. Now once you get this off, you'll notice that this will push in. So once in a while you'll have to pull that back out. Put that screw back in the brake so we don't lose it. And then go ahead and remove this screw here too, because we won't need this anymore. This is an adjustment screw. We want the new brake rod to seat against this black part. Okay, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here now. In your kit, you'll get this Jim Dandy little fixture here. This thing is really cool because what it does is it will allow us to cut this brake rod here, and it'll also allow us to epoxy the extension in here and have this flat area seat against here when it's curing. So anyway, what I want you to do, I want you to go ahead and mount the brake rod just like it is here. So if you'll notice, we've got the big 1/2-inch bolt here with a nut, and it's tightened up. Now once you tighten this, there'll be a gap. There'll be a gap in here. And if you'll notice on this back side, I've used the nut and the head of the screw to fill that gap there. So that actually fills the gap and spaces this out. And then what you do is you go ahead and tighten these up just like this, front end or top end bottom. And go ahead and tighten the nuts on the back. These will be adjustable in and out. And what that'll do, that'll lock that shifter in there so it doesn't move. So when we cut this, it'll be tight and it won't move in there. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll make that cut. Okay, I'm just going to use a cheap hacksaw to cut this, and then don't forget to use a little WD-40 or a little oil on your cuts once in a while. That'll help the saw go through there a little smoother. So go ahead and cut that. I'm an old fart, and if I can do it, you can do it. Okay, there you have it. Now your fixture won't have this bump on it. I found out by doing this that that bump actually gets in the way. So your fixture will be a little cut out a little bit here. And then it only took me about 5 minutes to cut that. So and my hacksaw is an old dull one, so that should be real easy to cut. And then we're going to go ahead and take the burrs off this, and we'll show you how to finish her up. Our next step is we need to take the burrs and the sharp edges off the outside and the inside of these pieces. So you can do that with a file or a belt sander or whatever. So get those nice and clean. And then what we want to do is we want to clean the inside of the tubing with some solvent. Go ahead and clean the inside of the tubes, these tubes. And then we'll be ready to assemble this. Now you'll notice in your kit you have the aluminum spacer like this, and then you have a painted black spacer like this. And if you'll notice, we've got to pay real close attention to the little dimples. See little dimples on both ends? Let's pay real close attention to those. Okay, we're going to go ahead and trial fit this together before we epoxy, just to make sure everything fits properly. So go ahead and grab the pieces, and the aluminum piece goes in the side this, like that. And then this steel outer piece goes over the outside. Now you may have to kind of push it and pop it, because that little dimple may hold it up. So push that all the way in, and then same thing here. These two should be flush now, and then that'll go together like that. Make sure they go all the way in and fit nice and against the shoulders inside. Before we epoxy this, I want you to go ahead and grab this block that's in your kit. Looks like this. It has this screw in the bottom. Make sure it's backed out. It's not sticking out on this side here. We're going to screw this on the fixture. Go ahead and lay your brake pedal like that into your fixture, and we'll screw this on there. And I want to double check, make sure all this fits. Okay, I've screwed the block to the fixture here, and then I've taken this out. But go ahead and just make sure that the brake pedal slides back in there, through there. Make sure that it fits in there just like that. You should have about that much of a gap between the top of the flat area there and that tab. So anyway, just want to make sure all that fits before we get this epoxy going here, because we don't want to get the epoxy going and come to find out it doesn't work. So after you do that, I think we're ready to slam this bad boy together. Let's get started on the epoxy process. Now you'll notice we've got the tubes of JB Weld. We've got the black and the red here. Make sure it's the slow cure. If for some reason you don't use the stuff we supply, it's got to be the slow cure, not the quick, because we need a little bit of time to work with this. So go ahead and squeeze equal amounts on a piece of paper or wood or whatever, and let's go ahead and stir it up really good. Okay, if you follow this, you won't be end up with such a mess and so much epoxy to wipe off. So what we want to do first, we want to coat the end of the aluminum piece. Just either end is fine. Just coat one end. And then what we'll do is we'll put a little bit in the inside of the tube here. This is this end that fastens to the motor. And then I'm going to go ahead and just slide that in there. Kind of twist it as you put it in. We put that slot in there to keep it from pushing out. So hopefully it'll keep coming, or it'll stay in there once you play with it a little bit. So anyway, go ahead and do that. And then what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and coat the outside, just the outside of this area here. Just like this. And then what we want to do is we want to take this piece and we want to slide the steel piece over the outside. Just like that. Push on it really hard. Get it to where it goes all the way down in there. And then what we should end up with is this flush, should be flush on this end like this. So that's what you should end up with right now. Then we'll go ahead and carefully wipe off this epoxy here. Clean that up a little bit. Then we'll be ready to do the other end. Okay, I've cleaned this up quite well on this end here, so what I've done now is I've gone ahead and just put epoxy around this end, just kind of push it down in the crack there a little bit like that. And then I put epoxy on the inside and the outside of the end of the brake rod here. And then we'll go ahead and just slide that together. There again, just kind of twist it as you put it together. And there you have it. Kind of hold it, and it'll let all the air out of that slot. And then we'll go ahead and clean this up the best we can, and then we've got to put this in the fixture for it to cure. So hang tough, and I'll show you how to do that, because that's really important. We've got to keep going because we don't want this to sit too long. Okay, now we want to go ahead and bolt our brake rod to our fixture. So go ahead and do it just like in our practice. We use the bolt here. Go ahead and tighten these two up here. The slot in the aluminum pieces here, and then the flat of the brake rod is here, and it's going to sit up against this tab to locate this rod so it fits exactly perfectly to your foot. I'm going to go ahead and show you a different view here. Okay, if you'll notice, that's the way that is. Now what I want you to do, after you get these two bolts tight here, just go ahead and run this up, just lightly. You don't need to get too carried away, but just snug that up and to where this flat area of the brake rod sits on this tab. That's what it should look like. You can see that gap there. That's about how much of that flat should hang out on that side of the tab. Okay, then it's really important too that we make sure that if you'll notice I put the tape on, it says up. Let me zoom in on that. Okay, it's these dimples. Remember the little dimples in the tube? It's these dimples. Right here. Here. Both dimples need to be straight up. Be straight up this way, because we're going to go ahead and drill these in a little bit and put bolts in there after the epoxy cures. So let me give you another view of it. So one more time, make sure that the pieces are together all the way. These two bolts are tight. This one's snug. The screw is pushing up the brake rod on this tab, and then the two dimples are straight up. And if that's the case, then we'll go ahead and let this sit, and then you can tell when the epoxy cures. Remember your sheet? When this gets hard, that means the epoxy's cured, and you can start working on this and drilling this out. I would give it at least 3 or 4 hours, preferably overnight, but you can tell by the epoxy on your sheet. Okay, while the epoxy is curing, let's go ahead and remove the rod on the shifter here. Now, your rod won't look quite like this, but don't pay any attention to that. And then I want you to notice that there's a right-hand lock nut on this side and a left-hand lock nut on this side. So basically what you do is you just turn them the same way to undo them. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Go ahead and grab the rod with a pair of pliers too, just to kind of support it so you don't put so much strain on the ball joints here. And then go ahead and we're going to turn the lock nuts this direction. That loosens that one, so we're going to turn it that direction, and then we're going to turn this one this direction. So they both turn the same way. And that way we can go ahead and unscrew the rod. Okay, I've inserted the longer shift rod into the ball joints, just the same as the other one was. Now go ahead and screw them all the way in as far as they can, and then just lightly lock the nuts, the lock nuts up against the collars there. That will kind of hold it temporarily while we handle it. And then we're going to go ahead and put the black piece on this. Okay, go ahead and grab these two thick plates. There's one shaped like this and the other like this. This one has the bolted on like a nut bar there. So grab that one. We're going to fasten this to this. Okay, fasten this plate to the foot peg just like this. You'll notice this side, and you'll notice the back side. Just leave these finger tight for now, because we're going to adjust this when we get it on the bike. Okay, we're going to hook up our shifting linkage now, and I just did this little drawing to show you what we want to accomplish here. Okay, what we've got is this is the shifter on here, shifter. Okay, you'll notice that the linkage on the motorcycle is on the same angle as the linkage on the shifter. And you'll see that when we mount this on the motorcycle. This is what you want. You want this to be close to the same angles on both sides. Now what you don't want is you don't want this one to be on this angle and this one to be on a different angle, because what that'll do, it'll put a strain on the shifter mechanism, and it'll make it hard to shift and could cause some wear and stuff. So we want it to get it as close as this as we can. Like I say, it won't be perfect, but this is kind of what we're striving for. Okay, what I've done is I've mounted the plate to the motorcycle here, and I've snugged these up. And then I fed the rod through there and hooked it on to the motorcycle right here. Now you'll notice that this the shifting lever is about this is a slightly forward of this, so this is on about that angle that I showed you on the picture. And then if you'll notice on this too, that's why I had you leave these loose. If you slide this back and forth, it'll adjust this lever up and down. And also, You can adjust some here too on this rod. If you'll loosen the lock nuts and twist it, you'll see how the lever's going up and going down. So you've got the adjustments here, forward and back, and then you've got the adjustment here on the rod. Now we want to get as close as we can on these bolts here without we don't want to disengage those threads on the rod. We want to keep those engaged as much as possible on the threaded rods. So go ahead and kind of mount that up. And then once you get this shifter about where you think you want it, go ahead and snug these bolts up. Mine is all the way this way because I like this to be a little higher. And snug these bolts up, and then we'll kind of cover it from there. Okay, there you have it. Don't forget to put the bolt back in the little arm here and snug that up. And then once you adjust your rod, go ahead and snug these lock nuts on both sides of those too. You want to make sure you get those you know, don't get ridiculous, but snug those up because these are vibrators, so you don't want those to come loose. Do both sides, and then you'll notice I've got everything tightened up, and the shift lever is exactly where I want it. You don't want to go too high, or it could actually fold up over. So it gets, you know, you can go up there a ways. And these are parallel, the arms, and there you have it. The thing works really well. Okay, before we take our brake pedal out of the fixture, we need to drill these two holes. Now what I've done is I've drilled this hole first, and the reason for that is because on this one we want to get this fairly straight because this little block will go in a little bit, and the spring will fasten to that block. So we want to make sure that this hole is fairly straight. So you know, use this one for practice. And if you'll notice, when I drill this, I push pretty hard. And you don't necessarily need to run your drill at full speed because you know, sometimes it's a little easier to go straighter and if a little more pressure and a little slower speed. So anyway, and then don't be afraid to use a little bit of WD-40 on the holes once in a while. A little bit of lubricant in there will help. So go ahead and drill these two holes. I'll finish drilling this in a minute and get this one as straight as possible, and then we'll be about ready to put this brake on the bike. Let's go ahead and finish putting this together now. Go ahead and use the screws that I show here. Now this is the 1 3/4 long. That was the same screw that we used in this to hold the block on there. And then this is the 1.5" long screw, and that was the same ones that you used in this area here earlier. So go ahead and put these together just like this, and you'll notice that the screw on the little block is facing up like this. I'll show you in a minute. And then the nuts that you're going to use are nylocks. Make sure you use the nylock nuts that we give you. A nylock is a nut that has the nylon in the end like that. That way these won't vibrate loose later. I'll show you this here. Go ahead and snug those up with that block just like that. And then we'll go ahead and show you how to put this on the bike. We're getting really close. Okay, next let's go ahead and install this on the bike. Now be sure and remove this screw right here before we slide this onto the splines on the bike. So go ahead and remove that screw, and then I'll show you how this goes on. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pry this open like that, and then we'll slide the brake on the spline. Okay, hopefully yours went on like that. Now, what you want to do is you want to have the brake as high up as possible on the spline there, because we don't want to have, if it's too low, then we'll have to move it again up to the upper spline. Okay, one more time is what we want is we want the pedal to go down. It'll go down quite a ways because we can adjust it in the back later, but we want to make sure that this bottoms out right here. And then once that you get that in that position there, then go ahead and put this bolt in there and snug that up. That's really important. Okay, now we want to adjust this brake just temporarily so we can get it just about set to where you may want it. So what we want is we want about a little over 1 inch of movement here. What's that, about 30 centimeters or millimeters? I guess it's millimeters, if my metric equivalents are correct. So So we want about that much movement there. And then the way we do that, I'll show you in the back of the bike here. Okay, this is the rear wheel on the bike, and this is the adjuster right here on the brake. I'll push that up and down so you can see that how that moves. Okay, what we want to do is we want to turn this in, and it'll give less movement up front. So go ahead and just put a wrench on there and turn that in. Now you'll notice when you turn that, there's like a half round section that fits against this section here. So as you turn that, it'll make sure that that round section mates up with this. You can see that as I move that. As you back it out, see how it goes in and then it comes back out? Make sure that's there when you adjust it. So adjust that to get that movement on the front, and then we'll continue on here. Next we want to put the crossbar that fastens these two pieces together. Now you haven't put this one on the bike yet, so this one's the side with the shifter. But I want to show you this off the bike. It'll be a lot simpler to explain. So what we have here basically is we have the rod with the threads on the ends. Then we have the spring here. Just slide that over the rod. And then we have the shoulder bolts or shoulder nuts here and here on the insides. And that's what the shoulder nut looks like. It's the one that has the flange on it like that. So anyway, that goes there with the flange out, and it goes on this side with the flange out. So the flange goes against the part here. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to run these shoulder bolts or nuts out against the sides. Once we get these bolted on, we want to run those out and put gentle pressure against the insides of these pieces before we put the nuts and washers on the outside. So I just thought I'd show you this on the outside of the bike, and I'll show you how it all goes together on the bike. Oh, and don't forget the spring when you put it together. Okay, you can go ahead and put this together just like this. The shoulder nut on each end. There again, the flange on the outside like that. Flange on the outside and flange on the outside of that one. And the spring. So go ahead and screw that together like that, and then we'll slide this into the bike. Okay, now let's go ahead and fish this through the bike here. All you do is just slide this down through the opening there. It's basically just right down below this bracket there. You can slide that through. If you have problems, you can take the nut off the other side and slide it through. But okay, that went through there just fine. And I can see where the bolt is through that slot on the other side. So we're good to go for a minute here. Okay, this is looking at the shifter side. Here's the rod that I slid through, and it's coming through the slot on the black plate here. So this is the threaded end here, and the shoulder bolts on the shoulder nut is on the inside. Okay, it may be easier to go ahead and hook this spring around this screw down here. It may be easier to do that now than after we get this plate on there. It'd be kind of a stinker, so go ahead and hook that spring on there. You can see how that works. So it basically loops around the rod here, down around that screw. Okay, before we hook this plate on here, we want to make sure that the shoulder nut is in far enough to where it's in further than these two tabs. Because when we tighten these up, we want this to be able to move that shoulder nut out against the plate, not push pressure on it. So make sure this is in all the way past these. Okay, I've tightened up both sides. I've kind of evened the amount of thread sticking out of both sides. And then to tighten those, sometimes you may have to grab that with a pair of pliers to turn this to tighten one side or the other. And go ahead and work both sides back and forth, this side and the other side, so you get about the equal amount of threads from both sides. And then you don't want to be pulling in or out too much, so watch that shoulder nut on the other side. But once you get this all cinched down, that'll make that really a solid unit there. Then double check your brake and make sure that the spring and everything clears. Man, we're just about done. We'll just put that foot peg on, and then we'll be ready to test ride this bad boy. Next, go ahead and bolt the foot peg on, and then tighten these bolts up. Now, whatever you do, we're not finished yet. We need to double check everything, and then I need to show you how to adjust all this, because that's very important. So we're not finished yet, just about. Okay, now these last procedures are really important, so follow them really closely, because what we want to do is before we adjust our brake, we want to make sure we adjust our chain. So we want to adjust the chain first. Now this is really important because when you adjust your chain, it also changes the adjustment on your brake. So adjust your chain, and don't forget to tighten your little lock keepers here. I think the manual says 9/16 to 1 inch free play in your chain. So go ahead and do that first, and then go ahead and adjust your brake to where you want it. Now I'm going to emphasize this. Okay, get into the habit of checking brake drum. If it's hot, there's not enough free play. So get into the habit of touching this after you ride a little bit, and make sure that your brake drum isn't hot. If it gets hot, that means you don't have enough free play on your adjuster here, and you need to loosen it up a little bit to give it more play. So there again, get into the habit of touching the brake drum. Like again, if it's hot, you need to back this off a little bit and give this a little more movement. And let me just show you up front here. Okay. Now, you probably won't want to give it any more than, you need at least probably an inch or so of movement there. Any less and you'll get that brake drum hot. You won't have enough movement. So after you ride it, you'll get the feel for it. And then one thing we've done here is the reason we put the spring on it is because say you're riding along and you rest your foot on the brake drum, on your brake pedal, you don't want it to have so loose you'll put a little movement on there and make your brake drum will get hot. So the reason we made this a little bit stiff is so that two reasons. Number one, you want it flopping up and down and making a bunch of noise. And then you also, if you rest your foot on a little bit, you don't want to be pushing down on it. So ride the bike and make sure that you've got the right amount of movement there. Check that brake drum. And then there's one more thing that we need to do before we take this out for a run. And a lot of people don't think about this either. Is when you do adjust anything like that, this switch right here, this is your switch for your brake light. See how that moves there? Okay, and it has an adjustment on it also. You'll have to adjust that so that your brake light comes on when you push on the brake. And if it's adjusted improperly, your brake light will be on all the time. So make sure you test that and make sure that your brake light comes on. I'm going to swing this around for you so you can take a look. So I've got that switch adjusted just perfectly. Hang on. Whoa, no rider. Okay, now don't panic. The reason I'm showing you this is because I've actually almost dropped my bike twice because of my shoelaces. So I'm just going to give you a quick note on this. Okay, watch, shoelaces, and loose clothing. Now the reason I say that is because a couple of times I've been riding and I'll pull up to a light and I'll take my foot off the foot peg and my shoelace will catch on something and I almost dump the bike. So I'm just showing this because I like to wear either slip-ons or just make sure that when you wear shoelaces you tie those up and kind of tie them around your ankles or whatever you have to do so that they're not hanging down and can get caught on something. Okay, and then the other thing I want to emphasize is let's go back and let's double check everything, because I've done a million bikes and over the years and cars and everything else, and sometimes you'll just forget to check a bolt or a nut or whatever. So make sure you check all your nuts and bolts. Make sure that the brake rod bolt is in and tight. Put your little plastic cap on. Make sure that your adjustments in the back are correct. Again, double check that brake drum. Touch it once in a while. It's a good habit. Make sure that it doesn't get hot on. And this applies to any bike, even bigger bikes with drum brakes. I'll check the other side real quick here. Okay, on this side of the bike, make sure you adjust the lock nuts on the shifter rod. Lock nut there and there. And then make sure that this bolt is in here and it's tight on your little rod there. And then double check these bolts. Make sure everything's snug. And like I say, if you have to adjust anything, just pay careful attention to what we've mentioned in the video before. So there you have it. Gosh, I think you'll really enjoy these forward controls on these Rebels, because my number one complaint about them all the time is the fact that your legs are so much into your armpits and your feet are way too far back. So enjoy these bad boys, and thank you very much. Double check and ride safely. Bye-bye.